With the Season 5 ants out, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what is the new carrier meta going to look like, and that's what I'm going to be trying to figure out in this video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our Discord, and also follow us on Instagram so you always have the support that you need to really enhance your account and get yourself to the next level. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can save a lot of money when you make in-game purchases by getting some amazing cashbacks each time you purchase anything. Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. So in this video we are going to be going over the new Season 5 ants and try to come up with a nice synergy to figure out what the new metas are probably going to look like for both free-to-play players and pay to win. Let's start with the Golden Chaser, the harder to get of the Season 5 carrier ants. We're going to be going over the 3 skills that matter most. Skill number 2. During the battle, when an enemy squad triggers a skill, if it's a damage skill, it reduces its hit rate by 10%. If it's a healing skill, its squad deals 280% damage to that enemy squad. So when an enemy squad triggers a skill, if it's a damage skill, it reduces its hit rate, which I'm assuming is either the damage of that skill or probably the chance of releasing that skill. In either case, it's reducing the amount of damage that they can do by either not letting the enemy hit it altogether because of reducing the trigger chance, or if it's the other way around, reducing the amount of damage you take in from that skill. But if it's a healing skill, then this Golden Chaser actually attacks the enemy and does some damage to them, and that triggers up to 3 times per round. So I'd say it's a pretty nice skill. Skill number 5. In the first round, the dodge rate and health goes up by 60%. So a health of 60% is nice. A dodge rate of plus 60% is actually pretty nice. I think that is a pretty high amount of dodge that you are providing your frontline ant. So definitely good. But this effect decreases 10% every round. So as a second round, you're talking 50% dodge, 50% health, which is still not bad at all actually. And then every time you successfully dodge, there's a 25% chance to inflict poison, which does 110% damage each round, or bleeding, which does 100% damage each round. Or if the target has lower health, bleeding actually does more damage on one random enemy squad for 2 rounds. Okay, so let's unpack this. First of all, 60% dodge, 60% health for this particular squad, which is definitely going to be in the front line, is really cool because that's a lot of dodge, right? And then it decreases by 10% each round, which isn't that bad, right? By the second round, you're looking at 50, third round 40. That's still a lot of dodge. And by the way, the first several rounds are the ones where it matters most. So this allows you to live much longer. Then the second part, whenever you dodge, there's a 25% chance of inflicting a negative effect, either poison or bleeding, which is pretty nice as well. Finally, skill number 8 increases the negative status damage dealt by all of our squads by 30% and reduces the damage taken from enemy squads under negative statuses by 30%. Okay, you're already putting negative statuses on the enemy potentially from skill number 5. You're probably going to have other ants that are going to be placing negative statuses as well, right? So now you are reducing the amount of damage you take from them to all of your squads, which is great, not just Golden Chaser, but all squads. But you're also increasing the negative status damage that you're doing to the enemies by 30%, right? So we were talking about the 110 and 100%. Well, that goes up because of this particular skill. So Golden Chaser, really nice. You can definitely see that it does have a lot of survivability in there, right? That dodge that we talked about, that's a lot of dodge and health. And then you have the ability of dealing damage to them or reducing the amount of damage you take, as well as really banking on negative statuses, right? And that can end up doing a bunch of damage to them and reduce the amount of damage that you take from them additionally. So that's a pretty nice ant, I'd say, and you can probably already see a bunch of ants that work well with it. I will mention one more thing. It's a carry ant that does give 60 combat speed, as do many other top carrier ants. Let's go to the next one before we start talking about the synergies and ants that probably work well and make the assumptions on what are some good fits. Rainbow Scarlet. Skill number 2, 80% chance of dealing 400% damage to one enemy squad and inflict bleeding, which does 150% damage each round. And of course, bleeding, as we talked about earlier, the lower your power, the more damage it does. And it's for 2 rounds. If the target's power is above 50%, adds an additional stack of bleeding. So now we're talking double bleeding, which is even better. And not to mention, we're already starting to see a little bit of synergy there because of the fact that Golden Chaser does love negative statuses and actually does help you a lot if the enemy has negative statuses. And Rainbow Scarlet is actually inflicting a negative status in the first skill that we saw, skill 2, right? 80% chance, by the way, is a pretty nice chance, and 400% damage is a pretty nice damage. So overall, a very good skill. Skill number 5 prepares for a round and then has an 80% chance of dealing 290% damage to all enemy squads. And then this damage increases by an additional 40% for each enemy squad under a negative status. Okay, negative status, right? You are just looking at everything going so cool as long as there's a negative status, right? Golden Chaser was all banking on negative status. Rainbow Scarlet is also banking on negative status, and both of them do apply negative statuses too. So you are probably getting a hint on the third ant already, but we're going to talk about that in a bit. A very high amount of damage, although there's a round of preparation. It's doing damage to all enemies with a reasonable amount, and then 40% extra for every enemy squad under a negative status. If all 3 of them are under a negative status, that is 120% extra damage to 3 rows. That's a lot of damage. Skill number 8. During the battle, increases the damage dealt by its squad by 30% and converts 20% of the damage to its squad's power. And then at the beginning of each round, increases the damage taken by 2 random enemy squads by 15% and reduces their healing effects by 40% for 1 round. Okay, unpacking this, increase in damage by 30%, a very lovely increase in damage. 20% of the damage you do gets converted to your own squad power or healing. And then at the beginning of each round, you increase the damage that enemies take, further increasing the damage overall. And also reduces their healing effect by 40% for 1 round, which means that if they're one of those guardians that do a lot of healing, this is not going to look very good for them. Okay, overall, a very nice damage dealing ant, but we noticed something in both of these ants, and that was they're both banking a lot on negative effects. So let's start thinking about our free-to-play meta. And when you think about that, negative effects, you're probably thinking Mimic Crawler, and you're absolutely right. Skill number 2. 60% chance of inflicting 1 random negative status on 2 random enemy squads, either poison, bleeding, corrosion, vulnerability, and exhausted. All of these count as negative statuses, and they last for 3 rounds, and it's stackable. Okay, we can already see that Golden Chaser and Rainbow Scarlet are going to be really happy because now you have an ant that has a pretty decent chance of placing negative statuses that last 3 rounds. That is pretty cool, and that works just so well with Golden Chaser's skill 8, and it also works really well with Rainbow Scarlet skill 5. What else does Mimic Crawler help with? Well, skill number 5, 70% chance of dealing 460% damage, which is pretty high damage, to one enemy squad, and then grants a buff to all of our squads to increase damage dealt to enemy squads with negative statuses by 50% for 2 rounds, which is stackable. Meaning that you already have all of those things that are working so well for you if the enemy has a negative status. And now Mimic Crawler is coming in and giving you potentially 100% extra damage to enemies with negative statuses, which Mimic Crawler is assigning as well, which Golden Chaser is assigning as well, which Rainbow Scarlet is assigning as well. So you are looking at a lot of damage being done to them because of the negative statuses. Finally, skill number 8 prepares for 1 round and then has a 80% chance, a very high chance, of dealing 300% damage to all enemy squads and heals the friendly squad with the lowest power with a good amount of healing ratio, 500%. That's actually a pretty nice healing ratio. And the healing effect plus 25% for every enemy with a negative status. And you are looking at applying a lot of negative statuses to the enemies, so this can actually be a lot of healing. just by reading out this, you can probably tell that these three ants work really well together, right? Mimic Crawler is really amazing at applying negative effects, right? It has a chance of applying negative effects. It has the ability of granting your squad a lot of extra damage to enemies with negative statuses. And then Skill 8 applies a pretty nice amount of healing to your squad with the lowest power. And that healing increases based on the number of enemies with negative statuses. Golden Chaser actually increases the amount of damage that negative statuses do altogether and reduces the damage that your enemies that have negative statuses can do to you, which is amazing. It has the ability of applying negative statuses as well, as you can see in skill number 5. And of course, it has a pretty nice survivability because it is a frontline ant. Finally, Rainbow Scarlet. Its skill 2 does a high amount of damage and can apply the bleeding effect, which is a negative status. Skill number 5 increases damage done to enemy squads with negative statuses, and skill 8 also gives healing and does extra damage to enemies, which adds up to a lot of damage. So for the free-to-play meta, we're looking at Golden Chaser being the front line, Mimic Crawler being in the middle, and then Rainbow Scarlet being at the back. I think these can work really well together and do a lot of damage to the enemies. Now, what about pay to win? And honestly, for the pay to wins, I would probably consider having Honeypot Ant in the back row, and we can talk about why by going through the skills. So skill number 2, 85% chance of dealing 300 and 80% damage to a random enemy squad, and inflicts poison effect on the target, causing 230% damage for 1 round. Okay, 85% chance, very high chance. The damage is very high as well, 380% plus 230. That's 610% damage. Very high amount of damage, plus the fact that poison is a negative status, helping your Golden Chaser, helping your Mimic Crawler as well. And if the target already has a poison effect, which of course it could have from Mimic Crawler as well, it spreads the effect to enemy squads without poison effect, and then has a 50% chance plus 10% for each negative status on the target to increase its own squad's control resistance by 90% for 1 round. Okay, just this one skill, you can see how well it works together, right? Apply the poison. If it's already poisoned, apply the poison to others that don't have poison. And if that happens, now you're looking at all 3 of your enemy squads having a negative status. You know what I mean? So now you are benefiting from having 3 enemy squads with a negative status, making this a pretty nice skill altogether because now you're just spreading negative statuses to everyone. Skill number 5, prepares for a round and then 80% chance to deal 360% damage to all enemy squads. That's a huge amount of damage and a pretty high percent chance of releasing it, even though there's a round of preparation. And then it has a 60% chance of inflicting poison on them, a negative status, right? So there you go, another negative status thing coming up. And then the poison causes 230% damage per round. That's again a very large amount of damage for 3 rounds, not 1 round, 3. 690% damage across 3 rounds. That is a lot of damage, and we're talking about a lot of damage to begin with that 360% going to all enemy squads. Poison is even more dangerous. And then you have the ability of Golden Chaser, which actually increases this negative status damage further. So this poison is actually going to do way more than 230% per round due to that 30% extra buff. And then you'll also end up doing more damage to them because they have the negative status, right? And then it has a 15% chance plus 5% for each additional negative effect on the target, and you might have a lot of them because you have so many ants that are putting negative effects, to reduce the target's healing effect by 60% for 2 rounds. Again, that's pretty good, right? 60% reduction in healing for 2 rounds. That's probably gonna hurt Guardians a lot. Finally, skill number 8, 65% chance to deal 250% damage to all enemy squads. This is without a round of preparation, by the way. And then the damage increases by 35% against targets with negative effects, which is pretty much what Golden Chaser and Mimic Crawler are doing, and so is Honeypot Ant doing as well. And then a 25% chance, and it goes up by 5% for each negative effect on the target, to increase the critical hit chance of the poison damage that the target receives by 50% for 2 rounds. Okay, so you could see that this is banking a lot on negative effects as well. Something that Mimic Crawler is also doing, something that Golden Chaser is also doing. So my opinion, if you are a pay-to-win player, you definitely want to have Golden Chaser, Mimic Crawler, and Honeypot Ant. That's gonna be your meta, and hopefully you actually end up getting it. I do want to mention again, this and Honeypot Ant also has 60 combat speed, just like the Rainbow Scarlet also has it. Golden Chaser, as I talked about before, also has 60, and then Mimic Crawler also has it. So as I mentioned, a lot of these top carry ants do have extra combat speed. Okay, so you can see how this carry ant lineup is absolutely insane. I mean, the synergy that I'm seeing here is extreme, like both for the free to play and the pay to win. I want to see how this ends up being in practice, because that's a lot of negative statuses and a lot of damage that we're talking. Like, I want to see, are these carriers gonna end up being like the new meta, like altogether? Because I know for a fact that Guardians have been sitting up there as a meta PvP, but these carriers might actually do a lot of damage to those Guardians and perhaps dethrone them? Well, we'll find out. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, I want you to know you can save a lot of money in the Ants Underground Kingdom using Aptoide and my promo code. Check out the link in the description of this video to find out how you can use Aptoide, and the latest promo code is going to be on the title of that video. Keep in mind, you can only use my promo code 5 times every 30 days, so use it on the highest value purchases like $100 ant coin packs, and you can buy smaller stuff using those packs without worrying about losing bonuses. If you're prompted to enter the promo code at checkout as well, while already having it in the AppCoins wallet, please do so. Otherwise, if you don't see that prompt and you have it in the AppCoins wallet, you should be good. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.